Hello guys, welcome to IAMABIKER.com. It's 2021 and our first bike review for this year is the new Honda H'ness CB350, and in the next few minutes I'll take you what it's all about. Okay, so now we all know, it's quite obvious, what motorcycle the H'ness CB350 is targeted at, right? No secrets there. Let's start with the engine and performance. So, single cylinder, big piston, long travel, all the traits of that is required to generate the thump. And I must say it sounds good, especially in the cruising speeds. You rev it, it sort of builds up. Maybe at higher revs, it's not that pleasant, but the cruising speeds. When I talk about cruising speeds, I mean cruising speeds comfortable for this motorcycle, and that's about 60 to 90, 100 in a fifth gear. But all the beauty of this motorcycle, I believe, is in the third and the fourth gear. That's where the power is really shown, and you feel a little bit of aggressive nature of this motorcycle. From a rider's perspective, when I saw that it has got 30 Nm of torque, what my expectation was that first gear, wheel spinning, coming out to the side, all those things. But what Honda has done is, of course, that would not happen because of traction control. So don't, comment that and start trolling me. But that's the expectation when you hear 30 Nm of torque at 3000 RPM. But what Honda has done is that with the gearing, they have, at least for my riding style, they've gone a different direction from it. So the first and second gears are actually quite short, so you need to get through them quite fast. And third and fourth gear is where all the power, and you have a slightly wider power band to play with. So once you're into third, you can really start opening up the throttle, and then the sound really builds up and it feels really nice, and you have much more range to play with the throttle. And then once you put it into fourth, it continues that momentum. But fifth gear is massively overdriven. So if you have build up to say 120 on fourth gear, which it will, when you put it into fifth, it just about keeps it there. There is not more oomph to take it forward, and it's sort of typical cruiser character. But I feel the fifth gear is massively overdriven in the sense that if you're on the highway, you're cruising at 120 in fifth gear. If you want to overtake, you need to shift down. If you're cruising at 100 also, you need to shift down to get back into the power band, which is properly available in fourth gear, and then push it all the way back up. But do I say that as a problem? No, because this bike has been intended as a city bike and for daily use and the normal cruising kind of tours, and it can do long rides. I'm not saying it cannot, but it is meant for this relaxed riding and not the aggressive riding. So riding it in the city is really, really fun. Like I told you, first two gears, get it out of the way, move into third, and then you can basically use the nice wide range of the power available, the torque available, and you can just pot around, and it feels really good. It sounds really good in the city. Those quick accelerations, the sudden bursts, getting away from traffic, getting through traffic, it sounds good. You get a lot of eyeballs, with the sound and the classic looks. Definitely fun bike. And talking about engine refinement, well, that's one place Honda has always been good. The H'ness CB350 continues that. So maybe being a long stroke engine, typical nature of that, higher up in the revs. When I'm talking about higher ups, I'm saying when you're at the limiter in fourth gear, which it does touch around 120. Then at those spots you do feel some, but those are nothing. They're nothing compared to what other single cylinder bikes do. So it's a total smooth affair when it comes to refinement. One important thing I felt I should say that is that for a city bike, of course, two major thing is the gearbox and the clutch. So I'm happy to say the clutch is super light. It's got the assist and slipper clutch also that factors in. But what I found a little bit I wouldn't say annoying, but probably I need to get more used to it, is that even though it's got the heel and toe shifter, you pretty much end up always using the toe shifter, because the height of the heel shifter is a bit higher than required. Unless you're properly always prepared for it, you end up always using the toe shifter, and I personally found it more comfortable using that. So like I said, primarily with the gearing and in the way the vehicle has been designed and tuned, it is very nice to ride in the city. On the highway, yes, of course, it feels planted, no issues. Of course, the lack of windshield means, anything above 100, a lot of wind blown at you. The point that I was getting at is a lot of people were already asking, can this be a replacement in terms of something that can do city as well as touring? From a touring aspect, definitely it can do the highway cruising quite well, but I feel there's this point in every bike where it's a sweet spot, and I wouldn't call it the cruising spot, the comfortable cruising speed, but there's a sweet spot, right, where suddenly everything just seems to gel well, and there's very, very minimal sound from the engine, and the whole, you're just flowing through that speed is actually a little bit lower than I expected. I thought that speed would be around the 90-100 mark, but I'm seeing it around the 80-70 mark. So a little bit disappointed there. Again, I wish that could have easily been solved if the fifth gear was not so massively overdriven. Apart from that, I'm sure a lot of people are comfortable in those speeds as well. So for those kind of people, it's fine. For me, I would have liked a little bit more higher. Again, out on the highway, if you're really pushing it, it does touch the 130 mark. Akhil, who was a bit lighter than me, he touched close to 140, but that was again really, pushing the vehicle hard. But I believe on any day, 120 is easily possible. Push it up on third and fourth gear, and it will hit the 120 mark and stay there. But again, that's not the sweet spot. Bring it down to 100, 90, 100, and then it's easy cruising. And so again, an important number in touring is the mileage. So I'm quite surprised. So being big cylinder, everything, I thought the mileage would be close to 30, but it's actually on the higher end of the 30 spectrum. So anything above 35 pretty much all the time. All right, now moving on to the handling side of things. So when I first read the spec sheet, 181 of curb weight, I'm like, whoa, 181 kgs for a Honda. That's not typical. Honda tends to keep their motorcycles lighter. That said, quite surprised. While riding it, you don't feel that weight at all. Obviously, due to the longer wheelbase, it's not as flickable as you would think it is. But compared to other cruiser bikes, it definitely feels much more easier to handle. And this front is actually quite light. Front feels quite light. It's quite nimble. To cut between traffic and all those things basically. But what surprised me was the turning radius. So it's got a very small turning radius. I mean, the handlebars really turn quite, it feels light. The front feels light, and especially in parking and when you're moving things around and when you want to carve through traffic, you want that short turning radius, for those tight U-turns. And surprisingly, it's got a very small turning radius, so definitely much helpful for the urban commute. One more good aspect is the riding position. So you're sitting upright on the motorcycle. I'll just show you. You're sitting upright on the motorcycle, and your feet is slightly forward of you, but not way too forward that you like how you're sitting on a cruiser. For me, I feel it's exactly where I want it to be on a bike like this. And you're sitting upright. You still have your shoulders nice and free, and your elbows free to really control the bike. It's a relaxed position. I wish the seat was a little bit on the softer side or more ergonomically better, for it to suit the touring side of things. But for city use, I feel the seat is quite good. And even for a pillion, there's enough space left. And me, I'm 5'11", and there's still enough space left for the pillion. Coming to the suspension side of things, well, I like the whole beefy front fork. It looks nice, but these are good for road use, much better than a typical cruiser. But I do wish the front was a little bit more softer. I mean, it does take the undulations of the road, but proper surprise potholes, it sort of it definitely sends some shocks back to you. But surprisingly, the rear is also quite soft, so which makes for a quite pleasant ride when you're on decent roads. And that's surprisingly good, because usually with cruisers, people really tend to forget about the rear suspension, and pretty useless, but in this it's quite comfortable. Now talking about the brakes, well, I would personally have liked it a little bit more, liked it if it was a bit more sharper in front, because you don't get that instant initial bite. So which means that you always need to bring in the rear brake also into play to make the vehicle stop. And it's not a bad thing. You just need to tune yourself to the riding style that suits this bike, because I'm a very front biased braking person. But at the same time, for this I had to change my style a bit to use more of the rear brake as well in tandem with the front to get it stopped. But either ways, you also have the dual channel ABS backing you up for those sudden brakes, and that definitely a value addition on this bike. So now coming to the build quality of the motorcycle, well, no complaints, typical Honda style. Some bits I wish the finishing was better, but I don't see anything that would not last a long time, and nothing really to complain about. Everything's been put together very well. The switchgear quality, the console, everything looks neat. Probably the meter could have been a little bit more bigger to my liking, but I don't think it would bother a lot of people. Yeah, so apart from the usual, the speedo, auto, etc., you have the live mileage and also tank range also visible. You have also access to see the current battery voltage on the screen, and you have the gear indicator and time as well thrown in. So a pretty standard package, nothing exceptionally different about it. And also you have a couple of telltale lights on the console over here which give you a status of the motorcycle, and you have an eco mode which reminds you to ride sane, and it's also the mode obviously where you get the most mileage. So another feature that Honda has added is the traction control, and it's available on both the variants. Well, the big question still remains, do you need traction control on a motorcycle that produces just about 30 Nm of torque? I agree that it comes in at 3000 RPM, but for me at least, I think it would have been more fun not to have it, because you can do some funny, interesting stuff. Different riders, different styles of riders, different levels of riders, and you end up in situations where it's better to have it than not. So definitely a welcome addition. So wrapping it up, well, I for one was very excited when this motorcycle was launched, and seeing the 3000 RPM and 30 Nm together, I was like, yay, let's it's going to be a good fun city bike and just zip zap around town. But the only issue, or something I wish was different, was the gearing ratios, because I wanted probably the second gear to be a little bit more taller, and fifth to be a little less overdriven. That's probably the only change I would want on this motorcycle, and it's not an easy change that I can do, right? So I can't just play with the sprocket and immediately get a better result. That said, that is my personal to suit my personal riding style. For somebody who's looking for a relaxed cruiser for the city use, and basic touring without stress-free touring, and without really worrying about a whole lot of performance, but something that is quite easy to handle in terms of performance and the actual handling of the motorcycle. I believe the Honda H'ness CB350 makes a very strong statement. I believe the pricing is also quite right. It is slightly expensive than the competition, but in that difference it makes up for a lot in terms of the build quality and the refinement and the overall easy management of the motorcycle. Overall, I like it, and I'm looking forward to ride it in the city a bit more, and give a little bit of revs, make some noise, and have fun with it. All right, so I'll see you in the next one. Happy New Year, and hope 2021 is not like 2020. See you guys.